I'm Rodney McGee.
And this is Alfie Williams.
And you are listening to Rodney and Alfie Talk Metal.
Sorry, too soon.
This week we have an awesome topic and an awesome special guest. We're going to be covering money and mental health and metal, along with, I'm sure, a couple other topics and things. And I'd like to welcome someone I'm psyched to have on, Scott, a.k.a. the Bunn, the baritone guy from YouTube.
Hello. How are you guys?
Doing well,
Excellent.
man.
Excellent.
Well, you want to tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your YouTube channel and your other projects so I can get familiar.
Yeah, sure. I'm a music artist based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. I've lived in Canada all my life, and I moved to Toronto to pursue all this stuff a long time ago. I'm 50 years old now, and I've been doing bands the whole time I've been here since my early 20s. And almost 10 years ago, it is 10 years ago, actually. 10 years ago, I went out on my own. I started it with a duo type project, a vocalist, and then I did all the production, all the recording, all the writing, all that kind of stuff. And I got a taste for it. It was just a creative project at the time, but it went very well, and it sort of set everything into motion to where I am now. And along that path, I started a YouTube channel. Initially, the topic of baritone guitars really kind of took off unknowingly. Like, I wasn't expecting that whatsoever. I didn't think it was that big of a mystery, but it was, and there was a lot to talk about. That I started getting more into the sort of repetitive conversation about that topic. I'm sure most people doing some sort of an online thing where they have a niche topic. It's something that everyone can struggle with, where you get sort of to the end and then you start repeat, mm-hmm. And it's difficult to find a way to kind of refresh that topic. So I kind of pivoted with that recently in the last year to, what am I using these baritone guitars for? And I was desperate to find a way to kind of make the videos and the music making become one. I think it's something that a lot of modern day sort of YouTube music personalities, musicians, whatnot, are struggling with, because one can fight against the next. I don't have enough time to make the music I want to make or the videos I want to make, and they're both suffering. Sure. So I've been looking at this sort of as a means to kind of put those together and tell the story of using the baritone guitars to actually do the music. Weird idea. And all from the perspective of being a 50-year-old man. I turned 50 this past January. And the reason of that focus is I realized that there are a lot of folks out there who, they have a lot of regret, a lot of kind of fear of doing things, being an adult. Some people are 25 years old and they're like, oh, I'm too old, I missed the boat. Mm-hmm. And I run into these sorts of things a lot. So I saw a lot of, I was just very motivated to kind of, I was motivated to attempt to motivate others to try pursuing your passions. Just tinker with it at least, And so I relaunched everything, and I've had 3 music projects for a while. And I launched them all like kind of officially and kind of treat myself as a label. Very big mess of things going on, but that's the whole story.
Nice. Well, that's I think it's really commendable. And now the first time we've spoken in person and stuff, we talked again, briefly in your comments section. But I really do want to applaud you coming out and kind of, for lack of a better word, being somewhat naked about going like, here's what's going on. Here's the real brass tacks. Here's the real numbers, the no bullshit, no Instagram self-inflation, no stuff, and really giving people, because as you know, and we'll touch probably a bit more on this later, is we become more and more atomized culturally, and we don't have scenes like we used to, and musicians that hang out together. There isn't that exchange of information. They're not seeing what their friends' band's going through and that type of thing. And especially some of the stuff that I had a series that went for 80 episodes called Metal Bass Monday, where I would cover everything from technique to myths about gear. And a lot of times I would talk about career and why they fail and why your practicing falls apart and that type of thing. And I would focus a lot on structure and methodology, and going like, you can't just wake up and shotgun your efforts and then think something's going to turn out of it and then get depressed and not do anything for 4 days. And I saw kind of that commonality with what you were doing, in that you had this thing of like, okay, you've got to sit down, pencil and paper, and here are the steps. You've got to analyze what you have. What are your... And that really struck me. It was kind of like hearing somebody else preaching to the same choir. I was like, yes, yes. So I really appreciated that. And that's why I think you're going to be an important voice to have in this, especially is, you know, we're going to get a bit more into, in future conversations, things about streaming and downloading and how it's affected the industry. Because I used to work in music marketing. At one point, although it failed, had started a label that, you know, kind of disintegrated because of partners who shotgun their efforts and then disappear for weeks.
I traveled the same road.
Yes. Yeah. But you know, it was at the beginning of streaming, and I kind of saw where things were going, and it took a hard left from where I was hoping it would go, and we've ended up here. But no, I really think it's a valuable series. I you know, encourage everyone to check it out. And I think, like, my first question is, since you have some of this content, and in one of your recent videos, you did talk about money and the artist's almost a guilt association with asking for rewards for money. Do you have any thoughts on the source of this, or where you saw it kind of happen?
I've been thinking a lot about it, actually. And maybe my best guess, at least for sort of the typical Westerner who is in pursuit of this sort of rock dream, you know, rock, metal, punk rock, the sort of guitar driven stuff. I guess you find it a little bit in indie as well. But from what I see here in Toronto with the sort of indie scene, is they have no fear with money whatsoever. They go after the money, they find the money. It's very much driven by money. And you know, indie, but it's very money oriented. But yeah, in the rock, metal, and punk sort of umbrellas, money is a big thing. And I think it has a lot to do with that middle class, working class guilt. There's this notion that, you know, music is playing around, or that drawing is playing around. It's not serious. It's like, it's not serious work. But, you know, the numbers are clear to see, like, how much music is consumed. Music is a very viable product. And it's central to so many people's lives in a whole bunch of different ways. You know, it's all central to our lives because we're interested in it as creators, but we're also listeners. And so we can, you know, kind of see inside of that very clearly. Whereas someone outside of that, say, my father, he's artistically inclined in more practical things like woodworking and such. So he does understand creativity and craft and all that kind of stuff, but he doesn't really understand something like the music business or any, you know, kind of more fringe artistic business. So you get a lot of folks like that in the middle class who are very practical with no background or understanding of, you know, the opportunities and the possibilities within this world of the arts. It doesn't have to be exclusively music. That just happens to be what we're talking about today. But so you get that kind of middle class guilt thing going on. And there are a lot of people who it kind of personally, I think, this is an assumption, but I think a lot of people take it as a personal, not a threat, but like, let's say let's say we're still all young and coming out of high school, maybe in college, whatever, and everyone's kind of working hard to figure out what the next step in life is. And you're the one person in your friend group who's like, I'm going to go for this music thing. And it's like, I'm pretty good. And I got a band, and, we're getting gigs and stuff like that. And I'm going to go for it. And in a lot of cases, in that sort of middle-class Western lifestyle, there's going to be a bunch of people who would be like, what gives you the right? Why do you think you're so special? These sorts of ideas. And really, it has nothing to do with that. But it does kind of get people thinking about the decisions that they've made and the path that they're on, and that whole comparison kind of mindset. And I think those are the sorts of mechanics behind the scenes that are driving some of the guilt that people feel like they have to mask, like, I'm not doing it for the money. I need to do this for the art, and I need to be pure, and all this kind of stuff. And then to kind of cap it off, alternatively, on the other side, we see a lot of stories, a lot of dramatic stories in the news and documentaries and whatnot, where a band is in a bad deal. I don't know if this happens anymore, but it's happened a lot in the past, where a band is in a bad deal, a bad record deal, and things are going sideways. Maybe they're on drugs and overworked and a million other problems. Things are piling up, and they have to deliver a new record, and they just deliver it because they have to deliver a new record, because the record label's knocking on the door and saying, hey, contract, we gave you all this money. So I think those kinds of stories get conflated and misinterpreted and misaligned with just like musicians and music or arts in general. And people get really worried about doing it for the right reasons, or not wanting to appear like they think they're a big deal, and all that kind of stuff. It all relates back to these, I think, more basic foundations in our very Western society. That middle class kind of like practicality, and you can't fly higher than I, because we're in the middle and we're hardworking Americans or whatever, Westerners. So I don't know if that kind of like sparks any kind of ideas from you guys, or if you feel similar. I'm curious.
Not to bogart too hard or rob Alfie of a spot here, but this is something that I've kind of talked about before, and I think this may resonate and kind of tie into some things you're saying. For me, I saw a very definitive split happen. I started touring really young. I was playing in my first bands when I was like 15. I started touring when I was 17.
Awesome.
And I remember coming up in an era with hard rock and metal where the idea of being a rock star was like, fuck yeah. Like, that you understood that to put yourself in front of an audience meant you had to have a certain level of egotism. Mm-hmm. There was something that said, I deserve to be looked at. And I think what happens as you approach about 1990 is you see when metal kind of became a parody of itself to a big degree, and you started getting the whole, as we've talked about, glam metal and band, even Metallica starting to have hits and it becoming a bit soft. Mm-hmm. That this was also about the time that I think that hip hop basically took the rock and roll crown. It became the place where, especially young men, or, the masculine vibe, not to exclude the women, that became the place where unapologetic aggression found its home. Mm-hmm. Those guys have never apologized. because you could see that dichotomy. You can yell at a rock or metal guy, oh, you're just in it for the money, and they shrink and go, oh no. You point at a hip hop guy and go, you demand all this money, and he's like, fuck yes, I got it right here. I'm throwing it in your face. You know, they have no problem with it whatsoever. And nobody throws those accusations at them. Like, nobody's running up to Kanye West and going, oh, look at you, you filthy rich rock star. And he's like, I thought this was the point.
I'm not doing this to not take care of myself.
Yeah.
Like,
so this split kind of happens, and then the further kickback about this going in the grunge movement kind of coming up, and you have basically, you know, far more, you know, flat out depressive music. You have music that its entire ethic was based around, oh, you know, don't look at me so hard. I'm no better than you. And that it became very self-deprecating, you know, like you could watch, I remember watching an interview with like Chris Cornell and Eddie Vedder, and they were talking about getting record advances, and they're like, yeah, I haven't even put the check in the bank. So I don't even know what I do with this money or something. I'm like, well, dude, I got a bunch of shit I could do with that check. You know, and just this, but the funny thing is that being an egotist stance all in itself, it's like, I'm just so into my art, I can't even think about my money, you know. It's like, you fake that.
Or a deep fear of a specific kind of judgment or something like that, which is probably the same thing.
It comes down to, you know, half of it's pose and half of it's, you know, probably the same thing. And I feel like that kind of set a trend in both directions, in that you know, grunge begets new metal, which, you know, still comes across with, okay, metal's back, but it's sad again. And then, you know, that keeps going. And then it's like metalcore. There's a lot of songs about me losing my girlfriend. And then, you know, it hasn't been able to kind of loop back to, hey, you know what? I'm tired of standing in the mirror and talking to myself like shit. And meanwhile, hip hop's on the other thing. And it's like the beginning of every video is me getting dollars splashed in my face by the guy just throwing it. And I feel like it took that crown, and the other has just been kind of driven into a very self-deprecating, kind of embarrassed to have any pride in itself ditch that it just hasn't gotten out of. It's kind of like the comparison I used to make about why I was way more attracted to metal than I was to punk, because I always felt metal was like this, yeah, I'm pissed off, but I'm putting on the boots, I'm stomping some ass, I'm going to do something about this, we're coming out. I don't screw with you if you leave me alone, but you come at me, I'm bringing out the tank. Whereas punk was like, I'm upset about something, so I'm going to stab myself in the face and cry here in the middle of the street and self-destruct. It's like, I just couldn't get with that self-hatred part of it, you know? And I feel like it kind of went that way, and then grunge kind of went, hey, punk looks fun. And then it just steered back over into that. And now we're there. So it's really kind of gone into there. And I think the great points that you made, those kind of marry in together with that's the overarching mental space this is living in. And I'm kind of watching that narrative go along with these musical evolution points. And again, I still feel like that's the case, that in a lot of areas, when, you know, young people who are aggressive or want some kind of outlet for their stuff, they, you know, when given the initial options, that hip hop speaks to those people faster because it's unapologetic. And, you know, nobody wants to hear, I want to announce myself to the world. I'm going to go to that music where I sit here and cry about how bad I feel. That's not going to do it.
There's that interesting sort of paradox of, like, with hip hop, which is such an incredible example, where you can have like dissatisfaction of the system, criticism of the system, maybe even you know, a disgruntled, upset perspective in hip hop, and still be like, yeah, I'm into getting paid. But with the rock and metal kind of crowd, it's like, oh, there's a conflict. I can't be upset if I'm making money. And I don't know why those two things are sort of bound. Alfie, what do you think, man?
Yeah, I just didn't want to tread over everybody. There's a couple of points that I picked up on. I think guilt is a big one. And I think it might vary in terms of like our geography, but in terms of my relationship with that, from a working class family like I've been in, it's not something that's tangible. It's like, okay, play with it, but you need to think about a real job kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And then some of my richer friends, the middle class friends, their equipment and their gear and their rehearsal spaces were paid for. And money wasn't a concept for these young people. It just wasn't really, it's a toy. It's not there for a business opportunity, because they knew at the end of the day, a couple of years later, they'd be getting a job in their father's business or whatever. So I just think the relationship to money is different. And there is a guilty thing there, especially with lower, let's say, working class people. And the other thing I want to touch on, yeah, it wasn't taken seriously. Like the real money was in a trade, not music and not creativity, especially in working class people. The other thing that I wanted to address was where you mentioned, Scott, that you were making different products. So your Helix stuff, I took notice in, like you're selling a lot of your presets and your templates.
Right.
And a lot of people don't realize these products aren't tangible because you can't hold them, but they do serve a function. They are a service.
Absolutely.
And there is a need for that. And you've taken up on a demand and a need to bring these presets and things to people who want to, I don't know, not spend as much time in the program to do these things, if that makes sense. So I just feel like nowadays people are realizing you can buy things that aren't tangible that can still be very useful for your life. A microwave, a dishwasher, whatever. Like you can still buy the same tools, but for your computer. And we're talking programs now and these plugin abilities and all of these things.
And assets, digital
Exactly.
assets.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now we're opening the door to, there is a virtual reality of digital goods in music that far exceeds music itself. And it just so happens music is also in the virtual digital realm too. And I think younger people have picked up on that, but it's still trying to gain momentum.
That's a good point in terms of sort of the generational crossover. That's a really good point. It's something I've never really thought of or addressed, actually. You know, my generation, I'm Generation X, I'm 50 years old, as I've stated a million times. But folks from my sort of area of life, they haven't really fully internalized this whole digital space and what it really means, not only philosophically and creatively, but also economically.
Absolutely.
So it's a really good point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's, I mean, great points brought up by both of you guys and everything. I think something that's really viable that what I'm always fascinated with is the idea of self-fulfilling prophecies, that so often people do things that create the condition that they claim is hurting or devouring them.
Yeah.
And I for sure see one in a study that I think will make an interesting topic that applies to this. A study was done, and if I can find it again, I read it years ago when I was getting a label started, but they wanted to analyze, after downloading had been a big thing for a while, to see how it affected consumer choices about the music that they listened to. And they found out something really fascinating. What they did is they put two groups together that were all fans of a certain band. Half of the people in the group, they gave them the music totally for free and said, you know, enjoy it, go run with it. The other ones, they sold it to them. This was an album that they wouldn't name it specifically because a band allowed them to do it as an experiment, and they released the album before it was available to the public so they could do this. So, you know, obviously if you're a fan of the band and they go, hey, 3 months ahead of time, you can buy this album, they were good to do it. And then a month later, they ran through, you know, a little questionnaire kind of thing out of both groups. And they found out something fascinating when they repeated this experiment 5 times. That without fail, the group that didn't pay anything for it spent less time exploring the songs. They gave, on average, 20% of the amount of time that the group that did pay for a song to hit them before they would move on to the next one. In other words, like, impress me quick or I'm moving on.
Right.
They became less, they showed less overall interest in or mental investment in the band, like when are they touring, what's on their social media, you know, do they have a video out? They pursued it less. And also said that they had a lower percentage of people who said that they would either buy that album or that they would be willing to pick up the follow-up album.
Right.
The people who paid for it, even though they paid at a discount, they, like, their payment, they said, you know, we didn't want to do anything major. I think it was like $4 for the entire CD. Those people were far more engaged with the artist. They sought out more information about them. They listened to the songs more often and more in depth. And on every single gauge, they got into the music more and became, you know, more of what we in music marketing now, I guess, would be called like super fan status. Right. Where they're at that level, they're going to buy your t-shirt. They're going to see you on the road. They're going to follow your social media. And it was just that few dollars, but it's not the money. It's that psychological thing of when you put skin in the game, when you invest in it yourself, now it has part of you in it. It's like, I bought this. Like, I made this investment and now I want a return on my investment. So I'm going to get involved in this. And it really goes back to, you know, I mean, how many hundreds of thousands of years of, you know, human stories have we heard or something? You know, nobody gives a shit when it's free. It's, you know, they used to even say it about your wives and stuff. Nobody's going to buy the cow if they get the milk for free, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like that's become a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way, in that it's like, I don't want to charge for my songs. I'm embarrassed to ask money. It's like, well, now you're guaranteeing you're going to be devalued because, you know, you're upfront saying, please put me at the bottom rung because I'm handing you something for free out of desperation. Yeah. You know, I used to say every time I used to live in Los Angeles up until 2 years ago. And every time I would come out of one of the clubs on the Sunset Strip, there'd be all those guys who would like flop sweat at like 1:30 in the morning with their, you know, backpacks. God bless them, man. But they'd be handing out the CDs. Hey, man, check out my band. It was like their whole, you know, their sales pitch and all this stuff, giving away their things for free. Right. And all I ever heard when they handed me a CD was, here, you throw this away. It was like, yeah, they could have been the next Metallica. And I would just look at but the desperation and the please take this, it just had me look at it and go like, I'm never going to listen to this thing. You know. Yeah.
I have, you know, grabbed a few of those. There was a time when that street team kind of stuff did work, but it was pretty early. I would say like not, you know, 98 through 2000. I saw a lot more of that, and it did work depending on the manner of execution. But sure. I'm 100% with you in terms of this whole idea of define a particular value, particularly if your goal is to you know, build this up as a career, build it up as a business. If you seek to tour, if you seek to put out records, even if you seek to do it as a side hustle, as a part-time thing, it is a business, and there, it being set up in such a way where it can propel itself is a positive thing. And if you give it a value, it seems to work better. I did some experiments back in between 2012 and 2014 with certain material that was, Bandcamp makes it really easy to run experiments. And I ran this sort of, free, but I want your email type of thing. And I built up an email list and all that kind of stuff. So it was like advantageous to me to some extent. And some people, I was lucky that some people were interested in downloading. I did kind of drive a little bit of traffic to it. I was experimenting. I wasn't doing it aggressively, but I was actively trying. But it was interesting. Probably, 2014 is when I was like, okay, what happens if everything has a dollar value? There is no more, there is no more free, but there always is pay more if you want. Bandcamp makes this possible in an amazing way. Also, the website that I use, which is Bandzoogle. Like Bandzoogle is the platform, and you build your websites on their platform.
Mine's on there.
And they give you all the tools, right? And they also have this opportunity to set a price and then pay more if you like. And it's an amazing thing because I've had amazingly supportive, listeners, followers, fans, friends. It's a wide gamut. It's not one type of person, and their motivations are always different. But there have been incredible pay mores, like in the hundreds of dollars, multiple hundreds of dollars. It doesn't happen every week or every month, but it happens more frequently than you would expect. And the only way that you're going to know that as a reality is if you set it up that way yourself. Give it a value and set that pay more if you like, because the reason I made that decision personally is because I did it all the time. If I was in a good spot financially when I was buying music, I would always give them a few bucks more. I'd be like, oh, they want $5 for this 9-song record. I'm like, have 20. It's fine. I love what you're doing, and I want more. So I was always kind of that mind. Sometimes I'm not in a position where I can share it as much, but so I was like, why don't I just do that for my own thing? I'm that way. I think maybe the most likely type of person who might be interested in my material is going to be someone similar to myself in personality or interests. They always say with musicians, like your avatar listener, it's very business terms, your avatar, but your number one listener is probably you.
Absolutely.
And so you can make a pretty good picture of like who that is. And this is probably true. Like, who are all of your best friends? You share a lot in common. Like your best friends in music, people you've played in bands with, people that you grew up with practicing, and these sorts of things. Everybody has a different story, but everyone must know at least one person like this. You like the same kinds of bands, you go to the same kinds of shows, you pay the same kinds of money. You might disagree on certain things as well, but it gives you a pretty good indicator that you can model your number one listener kind of from yourself, so long as you are a listener in that space. Because some people make music in a space that is different than what they listen to. And that maybe that's a different thing, but nonetheless, giving it a value, very, very important. And I'm curious, what are your ideas? Alfie, what is your idea?
Yeah, I'm glad you picked me, Scott, because I have a few things I would say. A couple of things. I feel like personally, there's you guys have seen a lot more of the music industry than I have in terms of time. Sorry. I don't have that much time in the game, but I will say it feels like there is a very quick turnaround in terms of value now, where we've gone from when I was a kid, we had CDs, I was buying CDs and that kind of thing. And then we had the MySpace thing, streaming.
MySpace was amazing.
I know, it was the first iteration of streaming that was open, available to everybody.
Yeah.
And so my generation were like, cool, we can stream this new streaming thing. And that continued into MP3s. You can now download music onto your devices and so on and so on. And now we're at the point where my generation are in their 30s now. And it's kind of gone full circle where people are asking for money again. And going back to what we were saying about value, I'm thinking of the person, you might know him. He's an author called Ramit Sethi. He talks about personal finance stuff.
I know him well.
And he mentions how he deliberately prices his online courses at several $1,000s or something like that. The purpose is, he says, for this huge price tag, you're getting exquisite value and certain guarantees and that kind of thing. And he has like a range of products that are different denominations, so several thousand, 2,000, 500 and whatever. And it kind of feels like music has now gone the same way, where I'm just going to say influencers, but people who are online selling ebooks, albums, presets, you kind of have this opportunity to say, look, I made this thing, it's going to solve a problem in your life, and I'm guaranteeing you a certain value from this product. And it does feel, at least to my generation, we've come from this whole thing full circle, from CDs, free streaming, so zero value, to a guaranteed value, if that makes sense. If you exchange a certain amount of money, you will get this value. So I feel like there has been movement in my peers. And again, that idea of paying what you want, that feels like a very, I don't want to say like a new feature, but it seems like people are more inclined to do that given the chance. And like you said, if you can,
it's kind of like crowdfunding.
Yeah.
You know? And I never saw the parallel before, but it has, I think because of crowdfunding, the pay more if you like model is not so alien.
This is, we're right on a mark where this is beautiful. I'm loving this. Your experience, paralleled with something that I've talked with Alfie on this show before, is exactly going to show on a macro scale what that experiment I mentioned was doing, because of one critical difference. Now, correct me if I'm wrong on this. I want to make sure I have your side of it definitely down. You had a price, and then you could pay more if you wanted to. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. If you remember, there was a short period where a couple of artists who wanted to move away from this retail idea and made a big noise about it kind of went after the same model. It was 9 Inch Nails and Radiohead.
Yes, I remember that.
9 Inch Nails put out 2 albums, Ghosts, and it wasn't Year Zero, I believe it was something else. But they put out 2 albums that were like, download them, pay whatever you want. Radiohead did the same thing. The difference here being is they asked for no initial investment. There was no initial, it was just pay if you want to. What happened in both of these cases? They lost their ass completely. 9 Inch Nails, well, Trent Reznor apparently worked with a hip hop artist. I think he put almost $1 million into getting this guy launched, and they did the same approach. He worked with it, completely fell flat. And if you notice, 2 years later, Reznor was back on Interscope. He re-signed a new deal after buying himself out of his Interscope deal where he had his own sub-label. Right. And he bought back into it. That he was just like, these people are dicks. He lost an incredible amount of money, and notice Radiohead didn't repeat it either. Yeah. So you see that subtle piece in there, in that by saying, again, them stating, I'm not willing to assign any statement of value here, that they plummeted. You assigned a floor of value and then said, if you want to amplify it with basically like tip your server, type of approach, like, hey, this was a great meal, I have to pay for it, but the service was killer, so I'm going to add into that too. You actually did better than Nine Inch Nails and Radiohead. So it on a macro, two different pieces, that experiment is borne out in a writ large type of way. So that it's really fascinating to see. And I'm actually, I've just started, but I'm in the middle of recording a new release myself and things. Mm-hmm. And my reaction, or the things that I've been thinking about and providing value, is I'm looking at it less as an album and more of here's a world I want to complete that mm-hmm. music is the largest facet of. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to, the big push or the sell thing is going to be physical copies. And it'll, of course, accompany a download. You can download the files and things, but it's going to be things that have an intrinsic value you're not going to get from those things. Right. Because I feel like people are ready for a little bit of, I want to feel the thing in my hands type
Absolutely.
Of thing. And it's more an experience. Because I feel like a part of my marketability, because I'm a teacher, I do a lot of things on technique, that type of thing. That's a big part of my audience. So right. Bass and guitar lessons, and also mixing and recording and how to approach it. So along with the music, it's going to come in a digital pack where it's videos of me going through the recording process, why I made certain decisions. Here's how I mixed it. And then stems of all the songs with all the instruments. So it's like, okay, take your bass sound and play my lines and see how it changes the sound and all this. And then access to certain forum that only people who bought the album can do. So it's like you come into this world of it, and each song having its own artwork rather than, a singular thing. So something where you can do that thing of, creating a value. And what we used to do, back with albums and things, it's like you bought it and you looked at it in the picture.
It's a world. Yeah.
Yeah. And drawing someone into that. And then that creates a value that has more capital associated with it as well.
It also, all the things that you're talking about paint a really nice picture in terms of building that bridge between, I made this thing as an artist, and here is all of the things associated with that are for you. Mm-hmm. So it has this there's much more of a sort of community interest in it. The whole thing seeks to bring people not only in, but together. And I think that's extremely valuable at this time in history. I'm curious, question for both of you. Mm-hmm. Do either of you have much exposure to the sort of late teen, early 20s crowd of particularly music listeners in the world of like rock or grunge or whatever? Like, do you have any exposure to this generation?
Alfie, I'll let you grab that one first.
Not explicitly, no.
I'll give it a little bit of context. The reason I ask is a lot of the younger people in that generation that I am currently aware of, a lot of them are going back to tape Walkmans, Discmans. They don't even really care that much about vinyl. Vinyl seems to be more of an older crowd thing, 30 and up, like 35 and up, more dominantly. Mm-hmm. But these tactile things of CDs and tapes. And I think it has a lot to do with the device, not so much the medium, the device and the lifestyle and the show that it puts on. I don't know, Rodney, do you notice any of this? Do you see any of this? It depends, I guess, where you are geographically and what's going on there.
Yeah. I see a little bit of that with technology. Like the funny thing is I see it a lot in myself. Like, right. Hilariously enough, I find myself missing the days because I hate how everything has gotten so small. I like the idea of like electronics as furniture.
Yeah.
I live in like this big old Victorian house, and we bought one of those stereo systems that's like actually a
The cabinet.
Yes.
Yeah.
With the turntable. I was so happy with it. I'm like, oh my God, this takes up like half the room.
Amazing.
Like I want
and it's made out of teak.
Yes.
Yeah.
I want a stereo I can put things on. You know, like my TV is on my stereo.
Amazing.
But that tactile thing, and I've found that a lot of people, I feel like are going that way. But what I have noticed is through teaching and going to live shows, and I mentioned this in that in my review a couple weeks ago, I went to see what was called the Bay Strikes Back tour, and it was Testament, Exodus, and Death Angel.
Nice.
And one of the things that struck me immediately is how many young people were there.
Right.
I'm like, all the guys on stage are pushing 60.
Yeah.
And
they were, you know, the bands that I was like checking out when I was in my teens, and they were men.
Yeah. And I'm looking at these kids and I'm going, they look exactly like me when I was their age. They've got the battle vest on, they've got the concert shirt and the bangs and the, and I do feel like there's a thing of them seeking out the last piece they can find of something that has a tactile sense of community. I want like friends and real shit. You know, it's been one of my, you know, I'll try not to drift too far on this one because we've talked about it ad nauseum on the podcast, but I also feel like, and I've been told, this is one thing I've been told by, I think it feeds into it by a lot of younger students or just younger metal fans that I talk to. I've literally heard out of their mouth sometimes, our metal sucks. They're just like, they go, I listen to like Dio or something, and they go, I always go, does it feel honest? It's like they don't even know how to get to it. They're like, yeah, it's like metal feels pop, you know, like it's almost
pop.
Nice.
Computer. It's computer music. A lot of it, you know, it's so quantized. It's so perfected. It's so homogenized across, you know, an entire genre. You listen to one deathcore band and you've heard quite a few of the others. There may be a few unicorns in there that do stick out, but otherwise we are in this sort of genre saturation era. Yeah. And you go back to these older records, you're like, whoa, what is that? Imperfection. And honesty. Yeah,
that sense of, how can I say, it's almost like your ears can touch it. It's like there's a rough surface here. There's something individual, and there's sounds that people aren't doing now.
I'm after that. That's what I'm after. In the box, I'm all about modern production, but I want to find that kind of relationship. That honesty and that relationship of like old world practices, like doing it the way we used to do it. Because I used to work on consoles and stuff, but just using the new technology, but not using everything that it has to offer. Just because it's there, we don't have to use all of it. Just use the things that give us the power to create, but we don't have to necessarily use every possible option for perfection, unless that's what you want. But I think we're tired of that now.
I just wanted to go back to the honesty thing. Like I've kind of noticed this. Forgive me, it's not strictly metal, but I noticed it and I thought it was very interesting. And Rodney and I have kind of touched on it before about the honesty thing. In Stranger Things, there's been that the new wave of Kate Bush fans because that song by Kate Bush has been featured prominently in the TV show. And all of the young generation are like, this is really cool and this feels really different and it's not something we're familiar with. And I kind of deduced it's because Kate Bush was a musician that wrote, you know, how you or I and Rodney would write with instruments and not on a computer and not digitized and that kind of thing. And I feel like it now extends into popular culture. They're looking for something honest and that's tangible. And you can hear with your ears, like there's something not quite right about this in a good way. It's imperfect in a a musically pleasing way. And I think that's kind of why this Kate Bush song has really hit the mainstream. They just weren't expecting something so honest. And I think that's really fascinating to see more people realize that, while like you say that the digital stuff has been really helpful for creating as a tool, is great, but we don't want to lean on it because it's too perfect and it's not how humans hear, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And, kind of looping all of that back around to sort of money and business and all that kind of stuff. I think, taking some cues from the past in these ways. Kate Bush is a great example, not only in that her process of creation is, very kind of the layered traditional musical approach. And she was not afraid of technology. They used a lot of early technologies on quite a bit of the, like Running Up That Hill. That drum beat is an early sampler drum beat. And it was one of the first implementations in a hit song, from what I understand. But I digress. The whole thing of sort of tying all that up and building your product, in this case songs, or even if it's auxiliary to that, these things like we're talking with digital assets to help other people build songs. I think it gives everything more value when we approach things this way, because it's utterly closer to who we are. The more perfect we make it, the more computerized we make it, the further the material actually gets from us. This is a philosophical debate. I'm not trying to start an argument or anything like that. And there is definitely...
It's on. We're going.
But yeah, the personality is in the imperfections. There is definitely things with like signature treatments and whatnot that certain people might be better known for. But a huge part of a personality and a personal experience is in the imperfection. So looping back to sort of business and money and creating a product, it's in a way something that you can maybe get even more behind if it's a little bit imperfect, if it's a little bit more real.
Yeah, I think so.
I have... oh, go ahead, Alfie, because I'm going to use something to steer into.
Okay, just very quickly on that, in terms of imperfection, it's kind of like that adage, if it's too good to be true, it is. Yeah. And that applies to everything. And usually if I see someone on the internet and they have, I don't want to say imperfections, but they're not like photoshopped and everything, I can go, okay, I can relate to you. You're flawed, I'm flawed, we have, issues going on. I get that. And if it's too good to be true, you're offering me something that's a cast iron guarantee, I'm going to start questioning it. So yeah, I agree. Done, Rodney, all yours.
Well, again, tying into this, and I think there's a further statement that I think will segue a bit more into the psychological and mental health things about this. But the initial part being, I'd be really curious to hear from you, Scott, your thoughts on streaming and things like Spotify.
Yeah. Right. So I am late to the whole streaming game in terms of giving it attention. I've always, even though, some form of the stream technology has been employed, like Bandcamp, you can stream the album. MySpace, you could stream the albums. But, with these newer models of streaming like Apple Music and Spotify and Deezer, and where it is a pay-per-stream type of thing, there is earnings per stream. It's a new model. It's still young. We're still at the very beginning of it. Which is weird to think about. It already feels like it's been here forever, but it's still the very beginning. This whole world that we live in, if you think about music as we're talking about right now, it only really started in the 70s, which isn't very long ago. Like the rock band doing their own thing and getting out there touring and all that. It's all very new. But anyhow, with streaming, I'm a little bit late to it. I did not embrace it right away, and mostly because I had a lot of success with things like Bandcamp and direct downloads, and and I was playing live up until not that long ago, so I was selling physical merchandise as well. But I was reluctant to get into the streaming mostly because I myself am not much of a streamer in terms of my listening is from playlists on my devices, where all the hosted files are on my devices. Generally speaking, recently I did purchase a YouTube Premium account. I'm subscribed to a YouTube Premium account, so I now have YouTube Music, which has been pretty great. But Spotify was the thing to kind of like turn my eyes, open my eyes a little bit more to, oh, it's possible. I started to make a little bit of money because I'd been doing this YouTube thing long enough, and I had music up for long enough that a few people found stuff, and I started to make like, $20 a quarter type of thing, $100 a year or $80 a year. And I was like, oh, people are on that thing? People use that? I'm like, that's weird. And then I started talking to people, and they're like, oh yeah, like I don't listen to anything but Spotify anymore. Like people who were like, they went, I only know them from going to crust punk shows and stuff like that. I'm like, what? You listen to Spotify? They're like, yeah, Spotify's awesome. Everything's on there. I'm like, you're crazy. But it was true. And I started to look into it more. And I started looking at my own numbers more. And actually DistroKid approached me to do an ad, like a sponsored video. And it was at that moment that I really dove back into my did I say Bandzoogle? DistroKid. Yeah. I dove into the DistroKid analytics, and I really looked at my account because I just had it. I was like, yeah, I'll participate, but I wasn't actively using it. And I looked at the numbers, and I was like, oh, like it's a thing, and I think it's worth exploring further. So from that point, I started to, I started formulating kind of what I wanted to do with it, which was really populate the platforms with a base of material for two reasons. A, the more material you have kind of there working, it's sort of like passive income generation. And also it says more about you as an artist, the more material you have out. And I'm not talking quantity over quality. I'm saying like do your best work, write your best material, but do as much of it as possible and get it up to these streamers, these big streams. So I've been doing that. I'm still in that process, and it won't be until 2023 that I sort of step back and evaluate how much do I have, how much is up there, how much has it earned, what is my next move. I may or may not explore things like marketing specifically to drive traffic to that Spotify stream, to that Apple Music stream, whatever it might be. But I guess to wrap it up, I'm very interested in what it's all about. I'm very curious as to where it's at and where it might go and what it all means. And I'm trying to figure out how an artist like me, like where I fit into it and where my audience is my actual audience there, or is it just people who are like, oh, that guy's like, okay, he's on YouTube and I kind of dig a few of his tunes. Like, I'm not devaluing those listeners, but those aren't necessarily the listeners that I'm striving to connect with. I want to connect with people who I could sit down and have a drink with and talk about, I don't know, woodworking, like whatever, like just sit down and shoot the shit. That's my sort of avatar listener, I guess. So I'm in the middle right now of evaluating it, using it actively looking at it, actively evaluating it. I don't have a wide perspective yet on its potential or whatnot. However, in the first quarter of 2022, I made more on all the streaming platforms than I had made in the previous 3 years on all the streaming platforms.
Cool.
Specifically, not including Bandcamp.
Okay.
This is like Spotify, Apple Music, the whole package that you would have access to through a DistroKid, a TuneCore, whatever the case may be. So the evidence is there. It's still not a lot of money that I made, a couple $100, but enough that I'm like, oh, well, what if I really kind of maximize this and really take it seriously? I'm not exactly sure how I can do that or how I want to do that yet. How about either of you? Do either of you have music on those platforms, and what's your experience thus far?
I'll say very briefly, I don't, so I can let Rodney take over.
Time to change that up, Alfie.
Yes.
Well, admittedly, I've been watching your videos today, all of them, as many as I could pack in today, and Rodney makes his own music, and I'm like, I haven't written music for like 10 years. I think it's time to play with.
It's time.
Yeah,
and just start with the first riff. Don't worry about the rest. If you can get a riff done, great.
Yeah.
Then what is that riff? Is it a chorus? Is it a verse? Perfect. I know what other parts I need now. Next.
Yeah, like
next.
a Lego set.
Totally.
I think for me, I've been focusing more on other things, and I think I said to Rodney last week, I don't actually have time to play bass because I'm focused on video stuff, and so my musical chops have declined because I'm doing other stuff. It's very difficult to find that balance, and it's impressive that you can. I remember I watched your routine. You're like, well, I practice for 2 hours a day. Brilliant. Yeah. Good. That's good that you can fit it in.
Yeah. Well, the key is to really kind of nail down your processes and figure out like, where can I get away with doing the less, and what needs the most attention. And really what I realized in myself with all of that, this will be very brief, is that I was not aware of my processes. And so a while back, I really went through all of my process. What is my music creation process from beginning to end? Every single detail of it. What is my video creation process from beginning to end? Every single detail of it. What does that take? And what's interesting is, as soon as you get really clear on what those things are, you get a lot faster at doing any of them, because you're like, oh, I actually know how I do this. Because there's a lot of things that we kind of fall into, and we're like, oh, I've just done this for a long time. I don't actually know how I do it. And as soon as you get clear on it, you become far more efficient and effective in it, as well as it allows you to kind of like schedule things and take on more things, or add more layers, or do less. So yeah, I think you can do it, and I want you.
Thank you.
I want to see some riffs next week. I'm going to check in with you. Yeah.
All right.
So talking about streaming, and especially about something like Spotify, when I talk to a lot of people, especially other bands, young guys coming up, things like that, they place this incredible amount of emphasis on being on media and being on Spotify.
Right.
And I've got an album up on Spotify. I was a little reticent to do it in a few ways, but I wound up doing it more as an experiment, and it was an album, from a while back, and I'm like, let's throw it up and see what happens. But as I'm sure you've become somewhat painfully aware of too, even tons of streams, it's not very financially rewarding.
No, you got to get a lot.
Yeah. And I mean, you're even hearing from platinum selling people. They're like, I'm getting shitloads of streams and I'm not making any money at this. And I've had a couple knockdown, drag out discussions about this, about busting a few myths. But the consistent thing that I've heard coming out of this is people are like, yeah, but you got to get people into it, and you got to get people into it. You got to do this. And I go, and my reaction's always been, yeah, but getting people into what you're doing has to be an incentive for an end game. And it doesn't seem like there's an end game with Spotify and things like that. It's just, I got a bunch of people into my music, and I couldn't get my head around it. It's like, do you not have a place where they finally give something to you that either through Spotify you make money, the fans you make money? It's because then it becomes, well, they got your album for free. You're back at that point, at least for the consumer, going, this has no value. You can listen to it at any time. I'm begging you to listen to my Spotify playlist. I'm like, it's free, man. Please check it out. And not realizing 90% of the time, the way these algorithms are set up, when they say supposedly you're going to find new music, no, it's going to give you music. It sounds just like the shit you were just listening to. You're not going to find new music that challenges you or anything. And I finally got to this point, realized why there was this disconnect in between the rationale I was trying to reach and the one they were. And it was that the attention economy and this being a star in the digital space was the commodity. That was what they were really looking for, that the money meant less to them. And it was so much more important to be a star in that space.
Yeah.
And I started going, this again really can tie into some dangerous mental health stuff, because if you put your entire value on how many people are looking for me today, how many people are doing this, and constantly trying to break through this barrier where at the end of the day, you're just going home with an empty wallet, and these people will eventually move on. And every day you're having to run out. It's like, I just picture like some poor abused woman with a really distant husband or something, and she's like, I got this outfit today, does this look good, does this look good? And now that outfit's gone, well, I went and got a boob job, does this one look good too? It's like every day you got to come up with something, and it's like eventually that's going to wear out, and then you're going to be, all your efforts will have gone for nothing. These people aren't dedicated to you. And I'm going that it is this just, it's like punching fog, this attention that somehow we've created so much value associated with attention and internet stardom that it's actually overridden the self-sustaining instinct to get money.
Yeah.
And that's got to do, a heavy thing on your head, man.
Yeah. It's a lot of it is training. The indoctrination process, whether it be, on purpose or not, in this case, it's just the byproduct of the system. But people are sort of trained to think these ways and not necessarily question like how it all works and what maybe their total options are. And if you start to look at things like money and business very seriously as an artist or as a business in general, it's like, okay, I'm an artist. There is a business that is being built around my art. I need to really take responsibility. As you say earlier, it's like really take responsibility for what this all means, and also my trajectory and my future and my safety and all these sorts of things. And when you do that, you actually start to evaluate things like what are good moves? Why do people do things? You ask a lot of why questions, which is where I'm at with the whole streaming thing. Like why, how does it connect? All that kind of stuff. What's the end game for me in that? But one of the things that you'll run across if you ask enough of those questions is the whole like, I need to be famous. I need to be popular. I need to be seen. Well, do you need everyone? The answer is no. Exactly. And so how many people do I need to connect with? And what kind of people? So first of all, I would way rather connect to what we were talking about earlier. It's like the person that I could sit down and have a drink with and shoot the shit, have a good time, talk about the same things. Or similar things. We don't have to agree perfectly. But connecting with a few of those people, a handful of those people, 1,000 of those people, 10,000 of those people, whatever it's going to take to kind of make it all work, as opposed to just everybody just being internet famous. I think there's a little bit of this fantasized reality, like this fantasy reality of, if I make it big, if I become famous in some way, it will just take care of everything. Mm-hmm. The magic will just come from that. But the only people who really succeed in that space are the people who are, have a business built around it and are very purposeful. They're measuring everything. Everything is intentional and all that kind of stuff. And this is the case in any endeavor that sees any kind of success. On occasion, you will see unicorns, things that just pop out of nowhere, that are big, that are popular, that are really good, whatever the case may be. There's always a unicorn here or there, but they're very rare. And the mental health space, we should really kind of get into that part in terms of, the effect that this is having. I'm curious. So we are all digital creators of some kind. I guess that's what we are these days. I just think of myself as an artist, but the reality is I am a digital creator, and my economy is attention, just like yours is. It's more specific, we can get into the specifics of that, but that's the basics of it. And I'm curious for you guys, have you had a bit of a wrestle in the last, couple of years of doing it? And what was that wrestle for you?
Couple of years.
In terms of your head,
My last video was 6 months ago. So yeah, I am wrestling. Yeah, I'll jump on it a bit.
You have an enormous amount of views, though.
Oh, thank you. It happened. I don't know.
It's great. No, it's great. It's working.
I'm a really obsessed fan.
Just refresh. Yeah. Well, I don't know how deep into the weeds we want to get with the mental health stuff. All the way down, like Rodney said, we can stay at a high altitude. But
yeah, we're going to stay high altitude. But just like being a digital creator, there's a few things that maybe you wrestle with. And I'm curious, if there's anything that's, that kind of showed itself in the mirror to either of you, and you're like, oh, okay, this is noted. What am I going to do with this? How am I going to proceed?
I've sort of been on this, like I said, my last video was 6 months ago, last year. So I haven't posted anything this year. And the main reason for that is I just didn't have motivation. I had zero motivation to do anything.
You kind of burnt out on your space that you were in?
It wasn't even burnout. It was lack of interest. Right. And this bites into other stuff we talked about with, I guess, who do you want to be, your goals, your processes. If you have processes, you can fall back on those and not worry about goals, if that makes sense. But for me, even though I have mini goals and directions I want to be at and that sort of thing and milestones, I had zero interest in doing any work. And part of that is, it depends, unlike you, Scott, if you burn all the bridges, in a sense, you burn the boats, I'm not going back. I have to go forwards. You have to go forwards. But for me, I can pick it up and put it down when I want. I have a day job. This is just something I do for fun.
Right.
And I didn't have that motivation. It's more of a mental problem. I just didn't want it. That's it. I didn't want it. I didn't want it at that time. And
fair.
You can't explain why these things happen. And for
Do you feel like you're sort of on the hook to explain it? Maybe even just to yourself? Or are you kind of getting past that point now? Because you've had enough time to kind of really think about it.
Totally. It's a weird thing. I don't know about you guys, but usually when I finish a video, I'll take a week or two to relax. That's a bad move, because now you're giving yourself the space to fill that gap. And how long is a holiday?
And the momentum can never really take hold.
Exactly. And now for me right now, I've been busy. I've been saying to Rodney, I've been recording new stuff for Patreon stuff that I'm trying to boot up with the next video. And I've been working every day since last week recording, which I've never done. That's not my normal work schedule. So I've been recording every day and editing every chance I get, and right on keeping this momentum going. So for me, I know to have a process, to have a routine and momentum, and really for me personally, is to keep that break as short as possible. Not to burn out, but to take a breather. That's
100%, like so 100%. It's like that little dance between that that momentum and constant schedule, but always like never pushing that schedule to an unhealthy place. Cause that's ultimately where you burn out, or you lose interest, or you're like, oh, I'm done with it. Or you take a long 2 weeks off, 3 weeks off.
And it keeps going.
When you pick away at it, it's easy to constantly pick away at it. And what's interesting about that is when you focus on just doing the smallest thing, at least one thing today, every day,
absolutely,
or every available day, an incredible amount gets done.
Totally.
So yeah, I'm really happy that you found that, because it's a pretty major revelation. I think for a lot of people, it was for me when I finally kind of internalized it and got into that groove. And it has been for a bunch of people around me. How about Mr. Mr. Rodney?
I would say one of the big advantages I feel like that, or I would say two that kind of keep me in check, are one that I did start touring very early, and
you have a life momentum.
A life momentum, but that kind of thing of where I feel like a lot of society, and I think this feeds into some mental health things, is that there's too much padding, that things are too safe. There's always someone out in front of you protecting you from the consequences of mistakes. So you never learn from them and learn that a bumped elbow or a skinned knee isn't a life-threatening injury.
Right.
You know, I've had things thrown at me on stage. I've gotten into fist fights in bars. I've had somebody come up and tell me I was the worst musician they'd ever seen in their life. I've had those things, and I've had that time to psychologically deal with it and go, just because somebody says something doesn't mean it's true. Just because, it's usually about something wrong with them.
Oh, yeah.
And they're projecting it onto me.
Projection is a big thing. It's not necessarily something wrong with them, but definitely coming from them.
Yeah.
It's something they've internalized. Yeah.
And
100%.
That really kind of helps me in that it lets me kind of keep a focus on what is actually working on my channel and what are my pure motivations versus, oh, this person said this, I need to do this now. Or being able to be shaken off my path by comments, by outside input, things like that. And I also practice a philosophy called Stoicism.
Oh yeah. I know the Stoic.
Yeah. And
Seneca.
Yes. And that thing of like a daily analysis of like, what judgments am I making? What are these rooted in? And always having that thing of like nothing based on fear. And knowing that, like a quick example, over the past few months, it's taken me a while to kind of readjust because I was dealing with some health things and, all kinds of random crap and moving across the country. But I had been doing that series Metal Based Monday for literally every week, not missing an episode for over 2 years straight.
Right.
And not tooting my own horn, but like if somebody wanted to start at the beginning of that series, I feel like if you're a metal bassist and want an entire career and to know everything about gear, about tone, about mixing, like just watch.
It's that. Yeah.
I put out stuff in there that I just don't see covered anywhere else.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, though, I started noticing, even though I had like a cult group of followers, that the view counts were going down each week.
Right.
It wasn't getting pushed, and I noticed, and I know enough about YouTube to know that every time you put something out and it doesn't do well, the one that follows it in the same category, they'll suppress it. So failure begets bigger failure. And even if you're putting out better content in a series or under a same header, they'll go, oh, people didn't like that before, so now we're going to tank this one.
Yeah, I've definitely seen also in terms of just series specifically, like if you give, like with titling, this has got more to do with titling, because you could, within any niche, you could infinitely talk about the same 10 things over and over again from multiples of perspective. And do it fairly, like with value. But if you title it on YouTube for some reason as a series, like it would be a television series or whatnot, there seems to be an audience psychology that isn't really interested in episode 2, which is very strange. And I've experienced this with a few. I've done like 2 or 3 piece. I think the most I've done is like a 5-piece series where they were all, connected, and they had titling that connected them. And every time that I've done it, 3 or 4 times now, number 2 does worse than number 1, number 3, worse. And I'm like, weird, because the part that people really wanted to know about is in part 3. It's all there for you, but part 3 won't make any sense unless you use 1, 2, and 3. And to make it all one video is just an unbelievably brutal video. So in the effort to make it easier for people, for some reason, the medium of YouTube is definitely not series friendly, both from a psychological point of view, but also probably that algorithm interacts with the choices that people make and doesn't know why they're making them. It's really unfortunate because you probably have like an unlimited amount of base value in that series that a lot of people who really want it will never find.
And so, when I said that, I'll be doing it once in a while, but I decided to retire the series, I had a lot of people who started messaging me, and I have a Facebook forum just for people, that are subscribers to the channel and stuff. And they're like, man, we really missed the show. We wish you bring it back. And I'm like, yeah, but there's only a few of you that are truly dedicated to it. And I can't do that on a weekly basis. And being able to sit, especially through stoicism, and look at things completely unemotionally and through this thing of like constantly adapt and move, don't have an attachment to something because it's just gonna
cloud your judgment.
Lack of movement is death. So
sharks keep moving.
I keep readjusting, and it's like I can't listen to even though I want to. And some of these people I've even formed kind of over the web friendships. It's like, I can't listen to your voice because you have your own motivations. Or a lot of times it's kind of like a lot of like city people who are environmentalists and want to preserve these massive pieces of land and places. And they're like, nobody go there and you can't do anything. It's like, you like the idea of it being there, but you're never going to go there. You're never going to go hiking there. Just like the idea of it. Like, you like the idea of Metal Base Monday being there, but if there's a really good sale on tacos, you're going to pass it up and, go
get tacos. But,
So I started putting things up, and I went, okay, we're going to go through the things that are kind of your wheelhouse, and without saying anything, kind of experiment on them and find out what is the thing, then understand what the thing is, and then a new attack plan. And so I started doing a lot more gear review, which instantly got more popular. So I was like, okay, now is it that people like the gear you're picking, or is it that people like watching you play? And I started going through the videos and noticing that after my play demonstration, very few people were sticking around through the whole review.
Right.
And I went, okay, it's not even the gear title, like the Jeff Loomis 7-string or something is getting them in because I can pull it. But people basically watch me play and then they don't give a shit about what I think about it. Right. And then finally, just like 2 weeks ago, I went, I'm going to do just something that should absolutely take a dump algorithmically. And I put up a 1 minute and 13-second bass solo of me just riffing like an idiot.
Yeah. I know the one.
Okay. And that moved faster than any video I've done in like 5 months. And
it's great that people appreciate your playing.
Yeah. And I went, okay.
You do have a lot to offer there, by the way.
I appreciate
Just so you know.
That's kind of you to say.
It's very interesting the way that you tackle the instrument and the way that you express yourself through it. So I think maybe a little bit more of that.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I looked at, and I went, I've been teaching this though in Metal Bass Monday. I've done riffs, I've shown complicated things, and I went, why is it that they'll watch this 1 minute thing of me and go nuts, but they won't go back to where I'm like, I can make you this. And it's
very few
hard.
People want to actually take that responsibility. It's it's a very small amount of people. It's a lot, to be honest, it's a lot of work. You know, I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it or anything. Like, yes, it is on the table for anyone to take, but there's a major commitment of time, energy, and mental bandwidth that is going to be required of you. And a lot of people, this kind of goes into the mental health thing in a pretty significant way. A lot of people, are struck with overwhelm and instantly feel behind, even though they haven't started yet.
Yeah.
And that the whole world is ahead of them. They look at your skills. This is a huge problem. And I think I used to suffer from a certain amount of this as well. I think all of us have, maybe all of us do in certain compartments. But the overwhelm of the big, like how much it's going to take to get to the summit, to get to the top of the mountain, and how a bunch of people that you see and that you know are already there, so you're way behind them. So it's like this comparative, not really competitive, but definitely comparative, and I'm not as good as them. So my motivation is low because, I don't have the power to commit to this huge thing. And now I have regret. And it's just all this cascade of all these problems. Very interesting. How many people would you say from your viewership that are interested in the bass stuff and actually progressing? Is there any kind of metric as to folks who have gained some ground and shown some progress and are doing some cool things with with the kinship that they've found in your channel?
I think there's a good number.
Okay.
There was like one experiment that I did on a Metal Bass Monday where I said, I'm going to do a boot camp. I'm going to put a lot into this. I'm going to help some of you guys out. And I'm going to mentor you and show you, if you just follow what I do and what I tell you to do,
you will make progress.
Give you a template just for your practice for all time. Like I will show you how to get better as a musician without fail, and I will guarantee it to you.
Yeah.
So I got on a crew of guys who signed up for this 30-day boot camp. And I said, you're going to have an assignment and you are going to send me a video every single day. I'm going to critique it and send it back to you every single day.
Wow.
We're going to do this. I said, and in 30 days, you are going to shit your pants or I will give you your money back at what I get you to do. Because I do feel that one of my strengths is as a teacher. Like I've gotten into like neurohacking and things like accelerated learning and things like that.
You're very strategic. That's why. If you have a proclivity towards strategy and structure, it helps in all things. It makes people great teachers. And you also have a great personality. And you're handsome.
I was going to get to
all the
that,
pressure
Scott.
now.
Yeah. I was going to get to all that, Scott, but thanks for bringing it up. And,
Amazing.
Getting, that I was actually steering it back into the mental health thing, but because of those things, I feel like I've got a bit of kind of a shield going up that these things don't affect me as much because I have that sense of like, I don't attach myself to these things, and whatever presents itself as the real viable. Like when I look at where I'm at now, I go, people don't want to be shown how to do something. They want to see you do it, get freaked out by it. And then a certain percentage of them will go, I'm the guy that wants to do that. And then those are the ones that come in for my private lessons. That's where the real profit is, that type of thing. And my educating, and it actually benefits me in the end too, because then it says, okay, I can now turn continually pushing myself as an artist to reach higher and higher levels of proficiency and ability into what is the most beneficial and attention getting part of my channel. So bonus.
Yeah.
But it also,
it's funny because the way that you've broken that down is exactly the way that I take things on. I see something that's badass. I try to find a way to get inside of it and understand it, or take lessons or whatever, and follow that exact path that you broke down. So yeah.
I can see though, like on the mental health thing, a lot of people like say they were doing Metal Base Monday and the viewership is going down stuff. It's like, oh no, people don't like me anymore. They're not, that my series is dying. So I can see that type of thing. And, other YouTubers I know where they just start having these, like it immediately becomes equated with their own self-image. They start becoming depressed. I've seen some, I don't want to put them out by name, but I've seen some, I'll say really concerning episodes of some people where I've watched them have kind of minor meltdowns in front of a global audience on their channel because they're having this panic of like, why are you guys leaving me? Why are you? Right. And I'm sitting here going, it's not real life, man. Yeah. It's not.
And also some videos just do bad.
Yeah.
And sometimes a whole gang of videos do bad, even if they're good videos. And it's just that's the game.
Yeah, it is. But they don't see that way because they view the content as an extension of them. And that's where we get back to that, the attention economy. Yeah. If my value is completely tied up in how many people are paying attention to me, then if something does bad, it doesn't matter why. I'm doing bad. Yeah. And now, I'm devastated, and then comes the depression, and then comes the unhealthy thing. And then maybe, exhibiting some behaviors or things and a desperate need to call attention back to themselves. And it keeps going deeper and deeper. And I think that not even just content creators like we are things, but just, like you see in high school kids on Instagram and stuff. And, maybe for a little while, their uncle has a Ferrari and they're taking pictures and they're doing all this stuff. And then their uncle goes back home and they don't have that. And it's like, why are people unsubscribing? Why aren't my pictures getting the likes anymore? And we can laugh at it because, I think we're,
but it's a real thing. Yeah,
it is. Yeah.
And, this is also though, this feeds into the music and into metal when you're brought up with the attention economy being so crucial, and you're also growing up in a society that seems to place a value more on celebrating your deficiencies more than your accomplishments, that it's like, okay, now not only am I becoming insecure and upset, now the only way for me to get some of that back is to take that and blast it to people.
Right.
And make a spectacle of myself. And so, then you start getting the kind of lyrics we've been getting over the past, 15, 20 years of the, do you follow Rick Beato at all?
A little bit. Yeah. I'm generally quite interested in his theory, whenever he goes into the theory stuff, because he's quite knowledgeable there, and guaranteed to hit things that I don't know about. So
he said something that really struck me, and when it's almost like he made an observation that to me turned into a question, and then when I figured out what the answer to that question was, I was like, oh, that's disturbing. He said, have you noticed that lyrics don't tell stories anymore?
No.
Yeah.
Like that people don't tell stories. I went, Jesus Christ, he's right. Like there are
a lot of people don't even know what a story is anymore.
No.
And this has come up quite a bit. It's interesting, very timely.
Yeah. And I went and I just started looking through lyrics, just to make sure I wasn't, using my own bias and things like that. And I went, everything is I, me, my. I, me, my. It's every song is a display of something about themselves and usually something negative.
Yeah.
And
tragedy.
Yes. My girlfriend cut off my allowance, as I like to say it a lot of times. It's, some kind of minor horror that's been blown up to Armageddon circumstances.
Yeah.
But even at that, it's just become this, my pain is going to be bigger and louder than your pain.
Yeah.
And I'm going to just keep speaking it over and over again because of tension.
Yeah.
And I think that only ends at a bad place.
Yeah, it never serves you. It just takes your power away. You give your power away, your emotional strength, I think. So I'm doing this new series, not to talk, me. but I started doing this new series back in November, the 50-year-old baritone guy, trying to make it. Will he fall on his face? But the whole thing is attempting to break down a lot of these things that we're talking about. Really trying to illuminate the self-awareness component of being an artist. I think it's a really important thing in order to be able to get inside your own art and be like, what am I doing and why am I doing it and how am I doing it and all these things. And you got to answer a lot of questions about yourself. And I've been trying to make that sort of the central conversation. And just today, I published a video that where I was talking about song length. And what's interesting is it's not about song length at all. The whole perspective of it is sometimes the information that we're getting back from the loop of the share. We share the content. The content is digested and spit back out. And so what's being spit back out? And sometimes we see things that may appear at first as negative or, maybe a judge of our character or whatever, a judge of our work. But, going back to your practice of stoicism, being able to kind of withdraw from that emotionally and just evaluate it, just take a look at it, be like, oh, I'm getting a higher percentage of these sorts of comments. I'm noticing a trend. What does it mean? And actually really take a look at it. And a lot of times, if we can get out of our own way, we'll notice maybe opportunities in those things, or maybe a perspective that is incredibly valuable in terms of that illuminates things about our own process that we were not aware of. We just took it for granted. And so I used the 2-minute song, but the short songs as it was a thing that was getting a lot of comments. Some of them pretty overtly negative, some of them just a comment. But my address of it was not like, oh, poor me, I'm getting I'm getting attacked. It is, what is it telling me as an artist, and what is beneficial in that? And there's a whole bunch of beneficial stuff in it. And going back to your what you share about stoicism, it's really even if you don't go the road of stoicism, there's some lessons in it to get out of your own way. If you're experiencing, I have no motivation because I'm deflated because of this, that, and the other thing, those sorts of practices are like, oh, okay, who am I? What am I trying to do? What do I want to get out of it? What is the environment that all of this exists in? And as soon as you understand it, it gives you some room to move and maybe something you can do with it. A lot of times something positive or creative. Curious, any thoughts? Let's discuss.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in.
Yeah.
We talk about attention and value, and for me, it really comes down to, I'm going to sort of talk in broad strokes, but a lot of people who want to be famous and to be that superstar, the American Idol kind of thing, they're looking for that quick shortcut. American Idol. I can sing, I'm going to be the best, and that's
right. I get picked.
Right, exactly. You're going to be plucked out from your life and put somewhere else.
Yeah.
And I think us three have this observational skill where, and I don't know about you guys, but it wasn't taught to me. I picked this up along the way. People like, for example, Tim Ferriss, where he talks about how to observe your life, stoicism, these kinds of things. How can I step back out of my life, analyze what's important, what can be measured, can be, what's that thing? Managed. What can be measured can be managed.
Yeah. Really
important. And then, as you said, Scott, in I think your video today or a previous one about the boulder.
Oh,
and he written the top of the summit. Like, I resonate with that, or it resonates with me because it doesn't really matter what your endpoint is. And it does sound silly. The journey is the important thing, but how do you tackle that boulder? How do you get the boulder to the top of the hill? It doesn't matter if you have to keep doing it. I think that's far more important in your life. It's tackling I think you also said this too. What's in front of you? How can I make the most use of my time? And just in
an exciting, pleasant way as well. Like, not just pure efficiency. Because I think a lot of these conversations go that road. It's like, you got to work harder. You got to grind. You got to do all this stuff. Yes, some of that is probably good. But yeah, you should try and figure out what you love about it too and follow that path and be stoked,
Yeah. And if I can add finally, there is that efficiency is important. But I think for me, being observant about my life, mindful, huge thing. What am I thankful for? And it sounds, people overlook that a lot. Oh, you meditate? How can you meditate?
I do that every day.
But it's so important to just like, I moved into a new house. I have a house. I have a nice little balcony. Every morning I go, I can't believe I live here. That is huge. And huge stuff like that. Just little things like that. Celebrate the small wins.
We have running water.
Right. Yeah.
Do you know how many people on planet Earth, do not have running water? They don't have clean water either.
No,
they don't have anything. Way more people than who have it. And,
I know.
And I think it's very important to be mindful of. I'm so with you, man.
You bring up the water, and I always say to my partner, like, we have the same conversation where I tell her, think of the light switch. She and I are on the same page, but like, imagine the light switch. A builder had to put the light switch in the wall. Someone had to connect the wires from the house to the box outside. Someone had to do the infrastructure on the road. The road goes out to the power supply. All of these little people doing these little jobs that have brought the light bulb on in the room.
Yeah.
That's magic. That is black magic.
A lot of boulders to get to that summit.
Right. Mm-hmm. And that's what I mean. Like, just looking at these tiny things, and I'm going back to what I'm saying. There are people who just want that shortcut. But for me, it is knowing, being realistic. I'm not going to be plucked out of my job to be placed in front of TV. I have to do something worthy of someone's attention, be mindful of what I have. Go, okay, this is my lot. How can I improve that? Going back to Seneca, how can I make a difference? And I think we all share that feeling, like, what can I do in my environment? So I just feel like that's not taught. And I don't know how you can tell people that you have the power to change your environment.
For self-reflection, yeah.
Right.
Self-reflection, self-evaluation. to love yourself.
Right.
This is something definitely I can speak on with an experience that, I'll probably get some butt hurt and a few angry friends over this one. But definitely the I'm going to be picked thing. This, I think, a lot, and the source of probably a lot of, some of the mental health things that we're seeing and stuff too, is especially, when it comes into metal and the things about not being worthy and that type of stuff, I think we're looking at a thing of people feeling that their success is outside of them and somebody else's decision rather than it being them. They're just, again, that desperation and that lack of self-worth of person who is better than me, please choose me.
Yeah.
Audience that has my music for free, please choose me.
Mm-hmm.
I used to call it, I lived in Los Angeles for 26 years. And I used to call it Marilyn Monroe syndrome, that these people thought that they were going to work in a diner and one day some guy was going to come in and go, "You're a star, baby." And like all of a sudden, all this stuff was going to take off. And when I made the plan to move from Los Angeles to Michigan, I just looked at the living standard I was dealing with, the complete lack of success I was having musically in Los Angeles, which Alfie's heard me go into it, but the amount of myths I can dispel about that, the weakest pool of talent I have ever seen in my life. Los Angeles is a burnt out husk. That is, and I'm saying this realistically. I'm not just being
of its former self. Yeah.
It's living off of a myth that died in about 88. And people just keep going to it, going like, but I can strike it rich. And it's those people. They keep doing that thing of like, it's that shining city on a hill that I'm going to go there and I'm going to pull the slot machine. And that's what I realized is the musicianship level was so crap because people weren't practicing their music. They were practicing their
getting picked.
Exactly. And if it meant I have to give up my instrument and become an actor or a model, it's like, I just need to get picked. And I got from the group of people that, I had wound up kind of cutting back socially on a lot of things with people. I just was like, you either genuinely don't give a shit and we're friends of convenience, or you're just an unhealthy person. And, when I move, it's going to cut ties anyway. But when I was telling people and, telling the plan, I'm like, no, I'm serious. I'm getting the hell out of here. I think it's going to be a much better environment for me and stuff. That there was this kind of, oh, you're going to go to Michigan. What are you going to do out there? And it was like,
you're going to play bass.
Yeah.
You're going to play a lot of friggin' bass.
Yeah. It's like, oh, but you're leaving Hollywood. Oh,
Hollywood doesn't make the bass playing any better.
Yeah, especially when you're stepping in human feces. But but there was this thing of like, this is the magic place. You're leaving Camelot to go out into the peasant fields, or like
we now have this, we have this. And this is far better than LA ever was.
Oh, of course. And like everything changed. Like every part of the facet of what I was doing musically went through the ceiling the minute I crossed that state border. I said it was the first thing that got me to believe in metaphysics. It was like this black cloud ended at the city limit. But there was this thing, and I realized when I was looking at the people who were saying this, I'm like, you are so desperately clinging to this city, like people cling to social media or something. It's like, this is one day it will shine its light upon me. And, 2 years down the road, I check in on some people that I used to know and stuff. And I genuinely feel sad. And I wonder about their mental health, because I look and I go, the things that you're showing me in pictures and the place you live and the things you're doing are no different than 3 years ago.
Yeah, that terrifies me. That's terrifying.
I'm just going, and I go, like, your business hasn't changed. Your podcast hasn't changed. Your gigs aren't any bigger. You haven't put out a new album. You're playing the same songs. You're doing the same shit. I'm like, you're desperately just keeping your head barely above water and going, it's going to happen today. I'm going to get picked.
It's sad.
And yeah, and I feel like it's like that's a real life kind of version of what I think a lot of younger kids and the younger generation of metal artists are seeing digitally, is they're just treading water desperately every day while their self-esteem erodes and they become unhealthy.
They're emulating, they don't actually have like a defined end goal of any kind, and they're just emulating precisely what they see, or attempting to emulate precisely what they see, and just hope it works out. I think, I'm curious to what you guys think of this, but I think a lot of it, I'm not trying to remove the responsibility from the individual, but I am trying to sort of shed some light on maybe the behind the scenes mechanics of it all. And there is a very strong kind of system, like the post-industrial, like we still have the industrial system, spitting people out. It hasn't, even though we live in this like creator economy, attention economy, et cetera, gig economy, there's all these different options now. And the world is we describe the world very differently now. Not only is it different, but we actually describe the world differently. But a lot of the processes are still in place from the industrial economy, which is educational systems that were defined by the industrial model. The industrial complex is like, we need these kinds of workers. Yeah. So we need courses that will spit those people out. And a productive person in society is a person who doesn't complain on the factory floor or in the factory offices or whatever. And that worked for a little while. It's interesting how short a period of history that actually is in total, in the totality of history. But nonetheless, it was a significant amount of time. And the infrastructure that has been built to support it is still the thing, right? So it takes a while for quite a few people to be like, wait a minute, everything I've been told isn't like, if you don't have an entrepreneurial spirit to begin with, and I think that's the thing, like if you're a creative, you're going to have a little bit of that. You're like, I want to make things, and therefore I want to make my reality. I want to make my experiences. It could be very simple, but nonetheless, that spirit is there. But if you're coming from the industrial model, the industrial society, the remnants of it, and you're like, that shiny thing over there, that's interesting, and I want to be part of it, but I have none of those foundations whatsoever. I just want to be part of the thing. And we've probably known folks like this who are in bands, who want to be in bands to be in a band. They don't want to be a guitar player. They do the bare minimum to play the guitar, and they're like, I'm in a band. Yeah. Come check out my band. And I'm not talking that down. There's no bad reason to want to do a band. There's no bad reason to be involved in music. If you want to be involved in music in any way, music is awesome. Whatever you want to do to be involved with music is awesome. But that entrepreneurial kind of spirit isn't in a lot of people. And some people, it takes them a long time to get there, if ever. And they're waiting to be picked because the machine that churned them out that's what they churn out. Like I say, I'm not trying to remove the responsibility from the individual, because the individual ultimately has the power, but there's a lot of mental stuff, like a lot of mental baggage that is pounded. Some people, it's really pounded into them, depending on the makeup of their mental makeup, their metal, so to speak. But I don't know. Do you understand where I'm coming from? And can you see certain aspects of that in maybe some of these folks? Or maybe is there something else going on?
I feel like I see that closer in like your my generation, maybe one behind us. For the younger crew of metal coming up, I think it's almost flipped on its head though.
Okay.
It's that they have come up in an environment, and the reason they don't have that thing of entrepreneurial spirit or moving is again because they've been so coddled and so, and I don't mean coddled in like a, oh, you know, everything was great for them and everything type of thing, but this thing of, again, the safety rails on everything. And this, you always wait for an authority. You know, you don't go play outside by yourself. Are you insane?
Yeah.
Or, you know, we have to have a play date that's supervised. And, oh, did you show up at school today? Well, of course you get a congratulations. And this constant reaffirmation that if you just listen to what the authority tells you, you get the cookie. You get the thing.
So it is the same. It's just maybe the model is different. The indoctrination process is still happening. But yeah, I never really thought about this safety thing.
Well, but I think
it's pretty major.
Yeah, it skews slightly differently though, in that because of the supposed self-esteem, which actually, you know, it's like there's a part of you that always knows when you're being given a trophy for bullshit.
Right.
But
well, you would hope.
Yeah. Well, but I think that is a crucial part of this. And that's what is, it's kind of these underlying things that people don't go to the second layer on. It's like, I think these kids do know that. They aren't stupid. And they know, like, I didn't
think you're right.
This.
Yeah.
I didn't earn this. So they're always secretly going to have imposter syndrome.
Right.
They're always going to have this thing of like, I didn't get this. I came in fourth. What the hell do I have a trophy for?
Right.
And everybody got one. But also this thing that this secondary kind of cause of trying to protect people so much is that you make them, one, completely unable to have any critical thinking because they're told, don't think, wait for instructions from the authorities. And two is, do not involve any risk. Risk is to be avoided.
Risk is bad.
Yeah. And it's like,
follow the rules.
Yeah. Especially in something like metal.
Oh,
I mean, you're dealing in counterculture. Risk is 100% of it. You're risky that you're ever going to be heard. It's risky that anybody's going to like you. It's risky that, you know, people are going to be just as visceral in their criticism of you as your music is to them.
Yeah. And the interesting thing is the bigger the risks you take creatively and in your, you know, your launching, your presentation of everything you're doing, is generally the thing that is going to be the most, where people will be able to find the most value and make the biggest impact, make the biggest difference.
Absolutely.
Of course. And that's what's being robbed of these kids. So of course, you know, they probably have this thing inside of them where they're just like these kids that I see showing up at the Exodus show and just, I mean, all it was feet. It was just an amazing pit, all this, you know, crowd surfing, stage diving, and I'm watching like 16-year-old girls just rolling right through this thing.
That is an amazing thing.
Yeah.
I have to say is the female equation percentage of participants, because I've been to a few shows now since Canada opened up really late on the COVID thing. So it's only been a few months now, but I've been to quite a few shows and tons of chicks just kicking ass at shows. And also I've been to some of the skate parks. I ride skateboards and tons of women just destroying. And I'm like, this is way different. It's great. I'm like, why weren't they there ever before?
Well, I've gone,
and there's a bunch of reasons why. Yeah. But amazing. Tons of chicks just crushing it.
But that speaks to me right there and saying like that they're going back to a culture that predates them by decades. And it's like, that tells me that
the youngest generations,
that they're not getting from what's supposed to be current and hip to them. They're not getting that they're getting, you know, that some part of them is screaming, get the hell out of the padded box. Right. And so they're having to come and hang with, you know, their stepdad or whatever at a show somewhere to get some sweat and some danger and jump in the pit and get bruised up and that type of thing. But again, when we talk about the mental health of it, you know, I've made the nickname of it and referenced it a few times, and I've said it kind of jokingly, but I think it's an apt description. I said, we've created human veal. It's just this, you know, open the cage on a calf that's been raised like that. They can't even walk.
Yeah.
You know, and then we go, okay, make dangerous music. It's like, they're just like, oh, put me back in the box. I don't know how to handle this. You know, they just
take the smallest possible risk, but make sure it's a risk. Yeah, it's the thing. It's my biggest motivation this past year is to try and communicate through whatever it is that's holding those kinds of ideas up. It's like, you know, a little bit of risk. Being different is cool. We should celebrate that, like creatively, interpersonally, all that kind of stuff, and just going for it, like just being like, F it, I'm just going to try, because what if I fail? All that is just information that tells me, okay, that angle didn't work. Maybe I'll try it a different way, or maybe I didn't try enough times. There's that too.
I wanted to add, I haven't really seen this, I guess, the participation medals. That's never really been a thing for me. I wasn't part of that, thankfully. It's more below me generation wise. And there is some of that in schools and the culture in the UK. But the thing that stood out for me was your countryman, Scott Jordan Peterson, talking about, in his book, the first book, let children ride skateboards.
Yeah. And how it makes them men.
Right.
Yeah.
And
his argument is very, or his concept is quite apt, I would say.
I thought it was useful because it just generally, whether you like him or hate him, it doesn't matter. But the rule that he proposed
I own 12 rules of life or whatever. Okay.
Yeah. Then you know the one. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I'm a fan, but I appreciate that person's perspective a great deal. And I think has a very valuable point of view.
There's a place for it, I think.
Absolutely.
And in terms of like the skateboarding, when I see like teenagers and kids and I see them doing dangerous or adventurous stuff like riding bikes or skateboards, I think, good for you. Do that. Fall over, get hurt, learn from your mistakes. That's how we learn as, you know, a species. And not to like do as Rodney says and get the safety lanes and just say, go to school, come back home, and then do your homework, and that's it. Yeah. But no, there needs to be some wildness there, and that's character building. You know, that's so important. It's
Alfie, when you were growing up, were you? I would imagine you were part of the sort of video game generation.
Yes.
Did you grow up with consoles?
How did you tell?
Well, it's just the age, you know. It's hard. I think it's hard to avoid. Most of my girlfriends, not my romantic girlfriends, just my friends who are girls. A lot of them are 10 to 15 years younger, and they all fall into that category. And they're all kick ass at every game. And I'm just like, I didn't really grow up with it. I grew up skateboarding and riding BMX bikes and stuff like that.
So you're an outsider. I was an insider. Yeah. I didn't go out much.
Yeah. So that's what I'm asking about. Yeah. It's like, culture changed and the nature of activities changed and all that kind of stuff. And it was brand new too. So it was kind of exciting. But yourself and all of your friends, you guys were the video games, and it's like, I got a guitar. Check it out.
Yeah, I think
it's like, you know how to play that thing? I think. When did that start for you?
For me, that's like when I was 15.
Okay, perfect.
So as a kid, there was a lot of video game stuff. And I think I see where you're going with this, that I guess the generation before mine were told by their parents, go outside and play. Come back home when it's dark.
Very much, yeah.
And for me, I never had that. It was like I could stay inside. Well, I wanted to stay inside, and then, like I said, there's a bit of this risk and exploring. Well, what do I want to do? I want to play bass or guitar, whatever. And me and my friends would hang out. We had a lot of freedom. My parents they weren't hands off, but they just said, just come back safe and let us know where you are. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
So just hanging out and just playing music and that kind of thing. So I thought I had the best of both worlds in a sense. Yeah.
And the main reason I bring it up is that like you have, firsthand experience of kind of being the proto generation of where things really went, because it ramped up a lot after you were done high school and off to college or whatever you did after high school. The next generation was unbelievably immersed in just the couch and some kind of a screen and not much else.
No, that's right.
And not even, the bass or the guitar. That's why there was that period. There's that little window where it's like, it seemed like nobody was buying guitars because they weren't. They were buying iPads and stuff like that. And people were making music, but they were doing it now
on the fringes.
Kids were doing it on the devices. Very interesting, like the sort of the path. And here we are now where, Ren is seeing all these friggin' children crowd surfing with Exodus back patches.
Right. Absolutely. And it's, part of me loves to see it. And, I guess as far as, the only thing that I've really kind of started to push, at least as far as my lessons and things like that, is getting across the idea that, and especially if we're talking about mental health as it applies to metal, is going, realize the medium that you have taken on. And it's not just steps musically you have to take, it's steps you have to do personally. We play what still to this day is arguably considered the most intense form of music that's ever been invented.
Yeah.
And
it can be. You have the option to go there, and it's actually a very big world of very intense music.
Totally. But if you're doing something new or extreme or something like that, it's, in that end. And it's like, you have to realize that aggression is born of a certain level of self-confidence. Yep. And so you have to have and develop that part of you that goes, I'm going to shove through this door, even if it means I'm going to hit my head on the frame and, do all this stuff. And I went, there's to put aggression and even anger out there, you have to know how to channel it. It can be incredibly powerful. You can use it as, jet fuel to shove you through things. There's righteous anger. There's righteous aggression that is a positive forward movement. Or you can sit there in the fuel and let it consume you, and you just cry and whine, and, it eventually burns out, and you join, some emo core band or something like that and wear a cape at the mall or something. So it's getting into that thing of going, don't let people tell you that this thing or this masculine impulse or aggressive impulse is a poison. No, it's how you use it. There is no such, all things are inert. It's what are you going to do with it, and going, not only will it not serve you musically, but it's mentally unhealthy to sit and not integrate that negative part of yourself and not use it, kind of judo flip it into something positive, which is to me what metal always was. That's kind of the end thing, is metal was that thing where like, I'm probably broke. I'm pissed off. I come from a bad family. My girlfriend's a twat. I just I can't stand anything that's going on around me.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you hear it in 5 power chords or less. And, so you brought this catharsis to other people of just, the lion has entered the field type of thing, and when he roars, the monkeys shut up. So it's like, be that lion, step out there. And
let your, like exercising that energy. It's maybe the best part about that kind, like all of this kind of music. For me, it's my motivation is the frustration with the world and all of the ills of the world. I'm pretty sensitive to them, and there's, you know, unbelievable conflicts and injustices and all these sorts of things. And yeah, I think about them a lot. I'm not stoked on them, and I put that energy definitely 100% into my art. Having a place to put that energy is such a gift, because I think there are a lot of people who don't have anywhere to put any of it, and maybe that's where some of the ills of the world are born. Maybe not. I'm not a mental health professional, but yeah, it's an unbelievable gift in being able to participate in this thing that we call metal or aggressive music in general, and to be able to not only have a place to put our energy, our negative energies, our negative emotions, our distrust with the governments, the whatever it might be. We can put those energies into this thing with a very pointed meaning. Like we can put precisely what we are troubled with into this medium, which is unbelievable. And there are a ton of other people that are like, they're like, I love the way that sounds, and they connect with it, and you can have a greater conversation, all these kinds of things. It's unbelievable. When you really start to think about it that way, it's like this bucket for the ills of the world, or at least just the frustration, whatever it might be, however it manifests for you. But having that place to put it, and to be able to be so articulate about it, and also to be completely artistic about it, and maybe reckless about it if you like. Unreal.
Absolutely. I think you know, we've done a fairly good exploration on it and everything. Do you want maybe everybody to do like a closing point or something that you would wanted to get out that maybe we didn't touch on or something?
Sure. I think we kind of hit a lot of awesome stuff.
Yeah,
I don't know. How do you guys feel?
Yeah, the horses stopped moving, so
I feel like we could do like another couple of hours, but it can't be today. We need to get you back on, Scott, because it's been a lot of fun. And
it's been amazing. Yeah, 2 hours.
The surface. Yeah,
it's 11 o'clock there, or 11:30. 11:30. Yeah.
Blew right by, man. It's it did an absolutely amazing guest, and this has been really interesting. And I know with some of the other topics we have coming up, like I said, a deeper explanation of the consequences of downloading and stuff. We're going to touch on some of these things, but yeah, I mean, we talk about it again. This is kind of a free form thing, and I could see, you know, anytime there's a topic or something, or if you have an idea that you'd like to discuss with us, we'd love to have you back, man. This has really been a great session.
I love the sort of the live, not live, but the sort of podcast conversation format. And I especially love when it gets into, you know, things that affect us all in a meaningful ways, and which I think we really got into some great stuff here. Sure. So, and yeah, I would love to do it again. I always have notes, so I'm always ready.
Well, to wrap up, you want to tell everybody again, where can they best find you and your multitude of projects?
I am Scott the Bunn, or just the Bunn is fine. You can find me at thebunn.ca, and that's my website, and it will take you to all the good places. I don't really publicize my social media because, yeah, I don't want to send people to Instagram.
That's fair enough.
And Alfie, you want to wrap up for yourself?
Are we doing final thoughts? Is this the Jerry Springer thing? The final thoughts for today?
You can close out however you like. I'm giving you a day pass.
Awesome. I will take the opportunity. I've been sitting on this for ages, so I'm just going to reiterate a bit. I'm probably talking to myself 6 months ago. If you are a creator, a musical person, or any other sort of creative person, give yourself a workflow, a routine, and just be mindful of what you have in front of you and grateful for the little things in life that make you happy. That sounds so cheesy as fucking metal. Look at Rodney's face. He's sick of it. But
It's where your fuel is going to come from.
It's true. Like, honestly.
I could smell the fuel from here.
Yeah. It's not kerosene.
So yes,
It's jet propulsion.
Yes.
All right, I've said enough. That's fine. I'll take my positivity and my Bob Ross attitude, and I'll get the fuck out. It's fine.
Oh, it's my whole thing. I'm into it.
But you know where I'm at. It's fine. You can find me. Rodney, where you at?
I'm genuinely not sure. That blue piece of paper starting to kick in about now. But you can find me at Rodney and Alfie Talk Metal on the video thing, on the, of course, all the podcast pages, and Rodney McGee on YouTube if you want to watch me way overplay bass lines.
The best way to play them.
And the official sneak announcement is, yes, there's a new Voice of Dissent album coming, and it's going to have so much bass on it.
Yes.
That bass will have to be redefined because of the amount of bass on this album.
My last single was 3 basses, bass left, right, and center, no guitars, and awesome. Highly recommend it for everyone. So if you have more bass than that,
I don't know.
I want it.
I feel like that bass is so dense, I'm not sure light can escape its surface.
All the bass, more bass, please, Rodney.
All the bass all the time.
I said if my goal is to just be the angriest and meth addicted version of Rush.
Oh, yes, yes.
So with that, I'll leave you guys with that. It's been a great session. Thanks again to Scott for coming on.
Thank you, Scott. Brilliant.
Thanks for having me. Super fun. I hope to do it again.
And I will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.